appreciating the role that Brazil has played in convening this meeting as the current president of the G20. We further commend the excellent manner in which Brazil has been steering the work of the G20 during its presidency, continuing to hold tens and hundreds of meetings to ensure that the G20 meeting is held properly later this year, the Summit of the Leaders. It has been an auspicious start to the 79th session of the UN General Assembly. We convened the Summit of the Future, at the end of which the Pact for the Future was adopted. The Pact is a blueprint in many ways for a sustainable, just and peaceful global order for all the peoples and all nations. In your address, Secretary General, to the General Assembly yesterday, you highlighted the fragilities and fray at the seams of our global order, a world of impunity, of inequality, and of deep uncertainty. We concur with your sentiment that the challenges our world faces may be daunting, but they are not insurmountable. Our meeting today reaffirms our conviction that as we strive to overcome these challenges, the United Nations must remain a centerpiece of multilateralism. At the same time, it must be modernized to make it fit for purpose and more effective, more agile, and more forward-looking. The UN needs to be inclusive. It needs to represent current geopolitical relations and the prevailing international realities. The G20's call to action on global governance reform that will be adopted today at the Foreign Ministers' meeting is therefore timely and also necessary. South Africa is committed to the reinvigoration of the multilateral system and the reform of the global governance institutions to make them more representative. It is not without significance that the countries of current Troika are all from the global South. The reform of the global financial architecture in particular must be the rising tide that lifts the fortunes of the most needy and vulnerable in the world. Deepening inequality and chronic underdevelopment are the cost if we fail to act now. The quest for mutual, shared and equitable prosperity necessitates that we undertake bold and decisive reforms to create a stable and inclusive international financial architecture. And these reforms are urgently needed to broaden and also to strengthen the participation of developing economies in the international economic decision-making system. South Africa is concerned about the slow progress that is being made in reforming the multilateral trading system. While the WTO Ministerial Council has registered some progress, much work remains to be done to ensure global trade is development focused and sensitive to the climate change imperatives that the world faces. South Africa assumes the G20 presidency from the 1st of December 2024 to November 2025. This is approximately 5 days before the deadline to the UN 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. The next 5 presidents of the G20 will have to focus their efforts on accelerating progress towards the attainment of the SDGs. At the launch of the special edition of the Sustainable Development Goals Progress Report on the 25th April 2023, the Secretary General drew attention to the gravity of the situation. Just 12% of the SDG targets are on track. Progress on 50% is weak and insufficient. On more than 30% of the SDGs, we have stalled or gone into reverse. If we are to meet the 2030 deadline, a paradigm shift is necessary. South Africa has adopted as the theme for the G20 presidency solidarity, equality, and sustainable development. We aim to mobilize countries of the world towards taking practical steps that will resolve global challenges while strengthening international cooperation within a rules-based system. In an interconnected world, the challenges faced by one nation affect inevitably all nations. Through solidarity, we seek to advance a unified and mutual support among nation members. By advancing equality, we seek to ensure fair treatment, opportunities and advancement for all individuals and nations. This must be irrespective of their economic status, their gender, their race, their geographic location, or other characteristics. Sustainable development is about meeting the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. The pace of mobilizing the necessary resources to ensure that countries with developing economies meet the SDGs does not just have to be accelerated, it has indeed to be turbocharged. South Africa's G20 presidency will place Africa's developmental priorities at the top of its agenda. A prosperous, developed, and stable Africa is a central pillar of our foreign policy. In this, we are guided by the priorities contained in the African Union's Agenda 2063 that talks about the Africa that we want. We will work in close collaboration with the African Union, which has now been admitted as a member of the G20. South Africa's G20 presidency provides us with a great opportunity to advocate for and mobilize support for developing economies of Africa, but also of the global South. In doing so, we will build on the efforts and successes of the Indonesian, Indian, and Saudi Arabian and Brazilian G20 presidencies. With less than 6 years to go before 2030 for the attainment of the UN agenda for the sustainable development, we are at a crucial inflection point in humanity's history. As the G20, we have an important role to play in fulfilling the aspirations of the UN Charter for social progress and for better standards of life and for larger freedom for the peoples of the world. In this regard, the UN Charter highlights the employment of international machinery for the promotion of economic and social development for all people. By strengthening and reforming multilateral mechanisms and institutions, by deepening economic cooperation, we can indeed realize a better world free from the twin scourges of inequality